There is a moment that happens before every single flip. It does not make the news. It does not show up in the legal filings. It does not get picked up by the reporters covering the courtroom or the congressional hearing or the press conference where the break finally becomes public. It happens in private. And it always looks the same. The person stops defending and starts documenting. They stop returning certain calls as quickly as they used to. They start keeping records of conversations they previously would have trusted to memory. They retain a personal attorney, not a White House liaison, not someone operating through official channels, but their own lawyer, paid with their own money, operating under their own instructions. And then, weeks or sometimes months later, the public finds out, and the coverage treats it like a surprise. It is not a surprise. It never was. The pattern has been visible every single time for every single person going back to the first term. And once you see it mapped out in full, you will never again be caught off guard by who flips next, because the question was never whether they would break. The question was always which stage they were at. Let me walk you through the 5 stages. And I want to be precise about this because the precision is the point. This is not impressionistic. This is not opinion. This is a sequence that has repeated with remarkable consistency across more than a dozen figures over 5 years. Different people, different roles, different legal exposure. Same 5 stages, same order. Every time. Stage 1 is public overcommitment. Before anyone flips, they perform. They go further than they need to in their public defense of the president. They do not just support the position, they become the most aggressive voice for it. They appear on television. They use language that goes beyond what the official position requires. They make themselves, in the public record, into the loudest possible defender. This is not loyalty. This is insurance, or what they believe will function as insurance. The logic, stated plainly, is if I am visibly and loudly on record as a supporter, I will be protected. The president rewards loyalty. I am demonstrating loyalty. Therefore, I am safe. It is the same calculation John Dean made in 1972. It is the same calculation Michael Cohen made in 2016 and 2017. It is the same calculation made by figure after figure in this administration, and it fails for the same reason every time. Because what looks like demonstrated loyalty from the inside looks, from the outside and from the legal record, like demonstrated knowledge. The louder the defense, the more it establishes that the person was present, was aware, and was participating. Stage 1 does not protect anyone. It implicates them. Stage 2 is the private signal. At some point after the overcommitment, something changes in the relationship, not publicly. There is no announcement. There is no falling out that makes the press. But the person receives a signal, sometimes explicit, sometimes not, that the protection they believe they had earned is conditional in ways they did not previously understand. This signal takes different forms. Sometimes it is a phone call that does not come when it should. Sometimes it is learning through a third party that their name has been mentioned in a way that concerned them. Sometimes it is being excluded from a meeting they previously would have attended. Sometimes it is something someone says or does not say in a room with other people present. The signal is always deniable. That is the point of it. But the person receives it clearly. And from that moment forward, their internal calculus begins to shift. They do not tell anyone this has happened. They continue performing publicly, but privately. The documentation begins. Stage 3 is the quiet preparation. This is the stage that, in retrospect, is always the clearest indicator that a break is coming, and the one that almost never gets reported until after the flip is public. The person retains personal legal counsel. They begin a process, usually over several weeks, of reviewing what materials they have lawful access to and what those materials contain. They are not yet cooperating with anyone. They have not made any decision about what to do, but they are preparing options. In several cases, we can now trace the stage through public records, bar association filings, court documents, financial disclosures that show exactly when a personal attorney was retained. In almost every case, the retention happened weeks before any public indication of a break. Sometimes months. This is the stage where Bondi was 3 weeks before the sealed envelope reached the federal courthouse. This is the stage Michael Cohen was in for most of 2018 before his public break. This is the stage John Bolton was in before his book was completed and before the White House knew it existed. The preparation stage is quiet, but it leaves tracks. And those tracks are always readable in hindsight. Stage 4 is the accelerant. Something external happens that compresses the timeline. This is the variable that differs most between cases, the specific trigger that moves the person from preparation to action faster than they originally planned. Sometimes the accelerant is a legal development, a grand jury subpoena, an indictment of someone close to them, a request for documents that they know intersects with what they are holding. Sometimes the accelerant is political, a public statement from the president or his allies that makes clear the person is being set up as a potential scapegoat, a congressional hearing where their name is invoked in ways that suggest they are being positioned to absorb blame. Sometimes the accelerant is personal, a conversation with their attorney that clarifies exactly what their legal exposure looks like if they do not act, a specific deadline, a ruling that changes the landscape. Whatever it is, the accelerant converts preparation into action. The person stops reviewing options and starts executing the one they have prepared for. The move is fast because the groundwork was already laid. What looks sudden from the outside has been in motion for weeks or months. Stage 5 is the controlled break, and this is the piece that most coverage gets wrong. The break is not emotional. It is not impulsive. It is not a loss of nerve or a crisis of conscience in the dramatic sense that coverage tends to imply. It is a calculated deployment of a prepared position at the moment of maximum legal and strategic advantage. The person has already secured or is in the process of securing their own protection. They have already identified what they are delivering and to whom. They have already calculated what they gain from the timing, delivering before a deadline, before a specific hearing, before a window closes. And they execute with precision. Look at the mechanics of how every major break in this orbit has actually unfolded. Cohen did not simply start talking. He fired his Trump-aligned attorneys, retained new counsel, and then made a series of precisely sequenced public statements that established his narrative before prosecutors could define it for him. Bolton did not simply publish a book. He timed the manuscript's completion, the leak of its contents, and the publication date around specific legal and political windows. Bondi did not simply hand over a recording. She filed a formal immunity application 12 days before the delivery, retained personal counsel separate from any institutional channel, and submitted directly to the judge, bypassing every structure that could have delayed or blocked her. These are not accidents. These are not people who simply snapped. These are people who executed a plan they had been building for weeks or months. The loyalty broke long before the public found out. The public moment is just the delivery. Now here is the part that matters most for where we are right now. The pattern does not just describe what has already happened. It predicts what is coming, because right now, today, there are figures inside this orbit who are at stage 2 and stage 3. We know this not because anyone is saying it publicly. We know it because the indicators are visible to anyone who knows what to look for. Personal attorneys are being retained. Certain calls are going unreturned. Certain names are appearing in legal documents in ways that will register, if you are the person whose name it is, as a signal. The next flip is not a matter of if. It is a matter of which stage the person is currently at and what the accelerant will be when it comes. Watch the legal calendar. Watch the congressional hearing schedule. Watch the specific moments when someone who has been loudly on the record goes quiet. Watch for the retained attorney that does not get announced but shows up in a filing. The pattern is always there. It was there before the flip became news every single time. And it is there right now, in real time, if you know where to look. The loyalty trap is not something that happens to people. It is something the structure produces reliably, repeatedly, and always in the same sequence. The only question is who triggers stage for next. And based on everything visible right now, the legal calendar, the congressional schedule, the specific names appearing in ways that matter, that answer is closer than most coverage is letting on. Watch carefully. Because when it happens, it will look like a surprise. It will not be. If this is the kind of analysis that cuts through what the headlines are missing, hit the like button and subscribe. Turn on notifications. Because the next development in this story is not weeks away. The stages are already in motion, and we will be here when it breaks.